The string in particular looks like an uncooked bihon. If you know, you know. Before anything else, I'd like to apologize for the white noise in the background. It's my fan, I have to turn it on, otherwise this room feels like a microwave. I don't have an AC unit yet. I'm waiting to get one next month and have someone install it. But yeah, here in the tropics, the summer heat is always prolonged, and it's quite a challenge getting anything done without being irritated by how hot it is. I'll try removing it through the editing process. There's no guarantee that it's gonna turn out well. Anyway, enough about that, and let's look at this 3-pack of figures that I've been so much looking forward to. It is part of Marvel celebrating 85 years, the Cabal 3-pack. When this was first solicited, I felt like Iron Patriot was the throwaway figure here because, first of all, I don't really have any liking or attachment to this character, but when I read some of the literature behind this, I thought that it does make sense for this Iron Patriot to be front and center of this box of figures, because that is Norman Osborn under that suit. I don't really have any attachment to Iron Patriot because I always felt like his design was kind of boring and the character himself didn't have that much of an appeal, but that's just coming from me who's not really that crazy into Marvel Comics. And I'm sure that a lot of people share that opinion about Iron Patriot. From a design perspective, it just doesn't do it. It just doesn't cut it for me. But when you put a twist to the character by putting Norman Osborn under the suit, then that's a whole new game. Back of the box is printed with a very nice key art for the comic book cover for the Siege storyline. Iron Patriot and Doctor Doom fighting each other, and you might not be able to see it at first glance, but Taskmaster is actually there, and Loki as well. So yeah, I'm guessing that they will come around to releasing Loki and the Hood. Maybe still part of this Marvel 85 years collection, we'll see. But yeah, I hope they will, because the story behind this is actually pretty cool. We do see a brief description of Cabal. Iron Patriot calls together some of the most dangerous beings in the world to form the Cabal, a volatile alliance that wreaks havoc on the world. It has appeared in Marvel Comics where Norman Osborn became leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the first thing he does when that happens is disassemble S.H.I.E.L.D. and forms Hammer. Norman, being the Green Goblin, decides to talk himself into getting rid of Asgard because they were on Earth, particularly in America, and that didn't sit well with him, especially because they wouldn't bend to his will. So he decides to set up a meeting with the rest of the Cabal. Dr. Doom shows up, hates the idea, automatically rejects it. A fight ensues between him and Iron Patriot. Norman tries to terminate Dr. Doom. Little did he know that Von Doom only sent a Doombot, and Dr. Doom already has a counterattack in place, and the rest was history. It is quite an interesting read, and I do intend to read the rest of the comics when I get around to it. Anyway, enough about that, and let's unbox this trio of cool figures. So the box comes with 2 trays. The first tray holds the figures. The one at the back holds the rest of the accessories. As for accessories, we have 2 guns, one for Dr. Doom and one for the Taskmaster. Taskmaster's gun is slightly smaller and is colored black. Dr. Doom's is slightly bigger and is colored gray. The Doom figure by default comes with one open hand and another hand that holds the weapon, or a trigger finger hand. And then we have a pair of fisted hands. Similar situation here for the Taskmaster, an open hand and a weapon holding hand for the sword in particular. And then we have a pair of fisted hands and another open hand. So different ways to make these figures expressive as far as the hands are concerned. Iron Patriot comes by default with 2 fisted hands, and we have a pair of open repulsor hands. So yeah, we can plug in these blast effects, super generic blast effects, into those hands, make it look as if he is blasting his way into action. And then there's this Doombot head, which looks pretty menacing. I love how those red eyes turned out. Overall, it strongly reminds me of one of those exoskeleton robots from the Terminator movies. Another good way to display your Dr. Doom figure. Dr. Doom, Doombot. And then there's the alt head for Iron Patriot, which is the helmeted head. And I think they did a solid enough job doing the silver line work. And I love how those eyes have an almost translucent orange to them. It's set way deep inside. The only thing I don't like really is how plasticky the white looks, but otherwise it's a cool head sculpt. And then we have the sword for Taskmaster, which is a straight up reuse of one of their older Baron Zemo figures, the one that came before the 85 years piece. I think Anyway, yeah, it's a cool enough sword. Nice silver paintwork on the blade. The bandages wrapped around the hilt almost has a metallic look to it. It's an overall good looking sword. Then we have the bow and arrow. They share the same kind of brown. The arrowhead has a nice gold color to it. Nice enough paintwork. The red feathery parts, I can't remember what it's called, has a nice red as well. As for the bow, the string in particular looks like an uncooked bihon, a type of noodles here in the Philippines. If you know, you know. Then we have Taskmaster shield, which is nothing special, but it gets the job done, especially in complementing the color scheme of the figure itself. Sloppy paintwork, especially here on the center. It looks as if it was subjected to extreme heat, and as a result, discoloration. Overall, it looks too plasticky for my liking, but it is what it is. I think a fair rating for this set of accessories would be a 4 out of 5 stars. They could have done a better paintwork at the very least, especially on the shield. And if you want, you can also count the quiver of arrows here at the back as an accessory. I don't think you can really remove it. Technically you can, but you might end up destroying this part of the figure. Figures have been taken out of the box and removed from stasis. Let's start off with Iron Patriot because he is still the least inspiring from a design perspective. But as a character, that's a totally different story. Starting off with the head, I do appreciate the great job they've done on the head. I believe it's a reuse from a previous figure, but with a slightly different paint job, I guess. I don't own that figure, so I can't really know for sure. Nice green on the eyes, super characteristic to the Green Goblin persona, and this just makes me appreciate the stellar job that Willem Dafoe has been doing in portraying the Green Goblin in the silver screen. This does look like a comic book version of him, so that's pretty cool. Hints of insomnia around the eyes, of course, because this guy doesn't exactly have the best quality of sleep out there. He's mostly sleep deprived, I would guess, because of his dual identity situation. It's a strong representation of the Green Goblin persona. A very nice color separation across the body between the red and the blue and the whites. And I say whites because there's a slight variance of white here on the abdominal section compared to the rest of the white across the body. These are almost pearlescent white. Yeah, I think that's a pearlescent white. And these parts of the figure here in the abdominal section is just a flatter white with some blue bleeding out from the color of the plastic itself, I would guess. Glossy plastic and whatnot. Star, no complaints there, it is raised, so there's a 3D effect, and I like that. I always love it when they do sculpted chest units rather than just painted over and stuff like that, because it looks a little too boring, but this one is a little more exciting. Here at the back, more of the same, except less paint, of course, but there are enough sculpted details to bring this thing to life. Never owned a Doom figure in the past, and I'm happy to finally own one now, especially of this quality. I like what they've done with the tunic. It's got a nice texture to it. Yeah, it feels good to the touch. And excellent paintwork around the buckles and on those gold rivets. Nice gold here on the rope as well, and on the circular pieces that clamps the cape in place. What really sells this figure for me would be the armorized and mechanical parts along the arms and the legs. So that's pretty cool. I'm not really crazy for cloth capes, but this is a good enough cloth cape, I guess. I don't even mind that it doesn't have any wires, because I don't intend to display him with his cape spread out, because I don't think it's necessary for this character. Turning the cape up, we do see that there is a jetpack here on the back, so that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good added detail, and I think this is elemental to a Doctor Doom figure. I'm guessing we could use the repulsor effects from the Iron Patriot figure. Yep, there it is. That just takes this figure to the next level. I love it. The armorized parts, and even here on the jetpack, there is some subtle bronze shading applied to them. So, that just makes this figure more animated than it already is. I love it. It's good enough that it's draping on his back, just like that. Popped off his head so that we can see it in more detail, and it looks pretty good. Pretty good? It looks pretty good. Yeah, you can see that there's a head underneath that mask or that helmet, and yeah, some skin showing off, and those eyes look pretty good. Painted nicely. Super expressive head sculpt for what it is. And then we have the star of the show. This is the real hook from this set, but I'm not complaining because it's still a solid 3-pack. Anyway, straight up we're using a lot of the Vulcan body parts. It does have a lot of meat to it. I love it. Proportionally speaking, it looks really good. Nice color separation between the blue and the orange and the white and the gold in some areas. Then he's got this rivety gold piece of strap around his left thigh, which does look good. Then he's got the gun holster with belts and buckles holding it in place. Nice gold on the buckles. Same gold here on the Taskmaster logo. Same gold here on the belt buckle for the belt across his body, or the strap across his body. Pretty similar design with the Doctor Doom figure here around the neck. He's got the gold rope with the gold clamps to hold the cape in place. It is a plastic cape. I'm more of a plastic cape guy rather than a fabric cape guy because plastic capes are more traditional for me. They offer longevity, stronger durability, and I guess better structural integrity, better stability, whatever. White here on the back and orange here on the inside. I think it's the same orange here around his arms. Yep, same orange on his chest as well. This head sculpt is ethereal. This may be reused from an older figure, but I don't really care about that because this is done pretty well. They did not cheap out on this. They went all out if you were going to ask me, and shading across the skull is masterfully done. The eyes do have an almost gold color to them, and the black surrounding it just makes it pop even more. The teeth and the furrowed look on the brow section, really, really good. Time for the articulation, starting off with the Iron Patriot figure. Head can look up that much. Good range going up and down, no problem there. There's some play on the neck, so that's good, some side to side tilt. Not as effective as it would be if this was a double ball peg setup. But it is what it is. The only problem really is that there is so much gappiness here on the back. Looks like a lollipop. 360-degree rotation. The arms can go out only that much because these shoulder pads are causing so much of a hindrance. You might risk breaking it if you push it farther than that. Be careful when handling this part of the articulation. There is no butterfly joint to speak of. The upper torso can bend forward, not really by a lot. Going back, better than it does go forward. There is some play right there for the side-to-side movement. It move around. It's an overall good torso articulation. It is effective enough for me, and I'm guessing it would be effective enough for most of you guys. The legs can go out that far, essentially full-on splits. Good enough range going forward and going back. Thigh swivel right here. Double jointed knees. Good enough ankle rocker. Cool. Can go back that far. Kick forward that much. So good articulation on the lower legs. Decent enough articulation on the upper parts of the body, except for the arms. It's a little too hindered for my liking. Arm does have a 360 rotation. We have the double jointed elbows. The wrists do have the horizontal hinge. We have a bicep swivel. I forgot to mention that. We have a bicep swivel. I'm doing this as fast as I can because this is a pack of 3 figures. Now it's time for Dr. Doom. Let's make sure that his head is installed properly. Yeah, I think it's installed properly. Head can look down that much. Very good range looking down. Looking up, just as effective. Some side to side play. Yes, there is some. A 360 rotation if you want. Move it diagonally if you please. Because there's also a separate articulation on the neck, on the lower neck. So that's great. For the arms, it's as free as you want it to be, not hindered at all. As opposed to the Iron Patriot's arm setup. This is good, and it exposes a lot of the sculpted details underneath. Here in the armpits, it's like a chainmail. Same here, opposite to the elbow. Inside of the elbow, what do you call it? Where the arm bends. If this is the elbow, right? I'm just thinking maybe there's a particular name for this area of the arm. Let me look it up later. Double jointed elbows. Then we have a bicep swivel right here. Then the mechanical parts and the armorized parts really work well in its favor because you can get away with any cuts that you have on this figure. You do have the vertical hinge for the gun holding end. That's great. Now this one has a horizontal hinge. This is how you do the articulation for the torso for this kind of setup. It's just a ball peg here on the waist. This is how you handle it. It goes roundy, just like that. Good enough range for the torso, especially for a figure with this kind of design. Can't really look back. Can move forward significantly better. So that's great. I do love this. These jetpacks right here on the back. His legs can go out as far as you need them to be. Granted, this is an armorized figure and he does have a lot of cloth extending below the waist. So yeah, good enough range going out. A thigh swivel that's hidden effectively by this tunic, so that's great. And then we have double jointed knees. Ankles can kick forward that much, can kick forward that far. So good range on the ankles. And he does have an effective enough ankle rocker. Just to double check, we don't have a butterfly joint, but the hinge arms work well enough for the figure. Okay, so overall it's a solid articulation setup for Dr. Doom. Now let's move on to the Taskmaster. I've been really excited for this figure. His head can look down, not as extensively as Dr. Doom's head does, but it's good enough range looking down. Looking up, a little bit hindered because, I would guess because of the cape. Plastic on plastic, so there's nothing much you can do about that. Left and right, no problem. 360 if you really want. Some side to side tilt. You can kind of force it, you can kind of finagle it to have some diagonal movement on the head. Arms do have a good enough range going out, and we do have the butterfly joint. Just allow you to put his arms across just like so. That's pretty cool. I like how his arms look. They look so powerful. Bicep swivel right there functions effectively, no problem. Double jointed elbows look good enough and function well. Horizontal hinge on the right hand. The left wrist does have a vertical hinge. This is going to be the same hand that holds the gun. This sucks because it doesn't have a trigger finger. But this is more effective in holding the sword because it doesn't have the trigger finger. So that kind of sucks for the gun. Otherwise, it's good enough. I do prefer displaying him with the sword anyway because I'm more of a melee weapon kind of guy. For the abs, it's a good enough ab crunch. And the back doesn't look so lumpy at all. Bending backwards, it's good enough for me. It doesn't look so terrible, but still could be better because there's a bit of pregnancy love going on there. The waistcoat doesn't look so conspicuous because of how well the big pouches hide it. For the legs, it can kick out that far, not exactly full on splits, but almost. But that's good enough for me. Even for a character that is supposed to have super mobility, he's essentially the Kakashi of the Marvel universe because he has photographic reflexes, made a career out of crime, sometimes hired by the government agencies to do the dirty work. Not the worst thigh cuts they've done, and this does help. This strap around his thigh does help hide the cut somehow. Double jointed knees, kind of stiff at the moment, requires a bit of breaking in, but not a big problem. Do we have a boot cut? Sadly we don't, but there's a bit of play right there. There's a slight adjustment that you can do. Allows the foot to kick forward that much, kick back significantly better. Otherwise, it's still a solid ankle setup. And we have the ankle rockers. Okay, let's see if I missed anything. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So, Taskmaster, I would say, has the better articulation than the other two figures. The cape, for being hard plastic, that is somewhat flexible, I guess, doesn't really hinder the articulation of the figure. So yeah, I do like this, and it's pegged well on the back of the figure. I really like this river of arrows right here. It just adds more character to the figure, or the character himself. Individual ratings for the articulation is going to be a 4 out of 5 for the Iron Patriot, 4.5 out of 5 for Dr. Doom because despite his design limitations, he articulates pretty well. For Taskmaster, same score, 4.5 out of 5. Overall, I'm just going to give it a 4.3 out of 5 for the articulation because it is pretty solid. Nothing much to say. Very nice articulation setup for these three figures. Dr. Doom is about 16 centimeters at the top of his hood. That would be about 6.5 inches tall. Taskmaster is about the same height as Dr. Doom. Iron Patriot is slightly taller by about a quarter of an inch. And that would be 17 centimeters tall. Let's do a more simplified version of the figure comparisons because I'm running out of time. My phone is about to die and I have to make a living after this. So yeah, here on the front we have the Jada Toys metal, die-cast figure of Optimus Primal, and then Shockwave from Loki's Wave 4. The recently reviewed figure, the figure I recently reviewed, which is the Superior Spider-Man. Here at the back is Legacy Collection Deadpool. And then we have Apocalypse Wave Wolverine. Then here's one of my favorite figures, which is the Scarlet Spider Mafex, and then the Mafex X-Force Deadpool here, right beside Dr. Doom. Then Batman hiding in the shadows. Well, not really in the shadows, but behind all of them. The Night Crusader Batman figure from Mafex. I like what I'm seeing here. These figures scale well with your Marvel Legends figures, of course, because these are Marvel Legends figures. And it also scales well. They also scale well with your Mafex figures. So to put it simply, it scales well with your 1/12 scale collection of figures. Good job, Hasbro. I came here thinking that Iron Patriot was a throwaway figure, but I couldn't be more wrong. Because despite my lack of attachment towards Iron Patriot, knowing that this is Norman Osborn, underneath the suit, underneath the Iron Man suit, Iron Patriot suit, totally changes the game for me. And being able to take a glimpse of what the story is behind this really makes me want to go all in. So I'm definitely all in for the storyline. As for the 3-pack itself, I'm going to give it an overall rating of 4.5 out of 5. They did a very nice presentation. Even the box has been very consistent across these celebrative pieces celebrating 85 years of Marvel. I do love the design elements that they put in place and how consistent they have been with the packaging. It is super displayable in and out of the box. So whether you're an in-box collector or an out-of-the-box collector or whatever, this is a good enough offering. This is a solid offering, and I would highly recommend it. It's got a good enough range of accessories. The details on the figures, on the individual figures, are pretty solid, and the articulation setup across these three figures, no slouch at all. You're gonna have a lot of fun playing with them, displaying them, or whatever you do with your action figures. This trio of excellent figures makes me look forward to other Marvel 85 years celebrative pieces that they will release, especially if it involves characters from this storyline. I'm looking forward to Loki, I'm looking forward to the Hood, and the rest of the Dark Avengers figures that they will put out. I'm not going to pick up all of them, of course. I'm still going to go by design because I have to be very intentional with my collecting. The budget is very limited. The economy is not exactly getting any better nowadays. So yeah, I highly recommend this, especially if you can get this for standard retail pricing. I got this for pre-order price, so it's great value for me. That's it. See you on the next video. And I promise I'm going to be reviewing the Astonishing Wolverine figure from the Marvel 85 Years collection. See ya!